Joining us now in studio, Meyrick Jones, Brian Cowie, a double para Ironman team. And we were just joking in the break that you guys are unique as a pair of athletes who work together. I want to talk a little bit about your stories, guys, before we move on. Meyrick, we'll start with you. You're an amputee below the knee. Tell us about your accident and tell us about how you wouldn't let that deter you in the realm of athletics.
Okay, well, on the accident first, you have to turn the dial back to 1995, and I was 21 years old. I was on a getaway with a girlfriend at the time. We were in San Francisco, and we decided to take a tour of the city on a cable car, those historic cable cars they have there. And partway through the tour, the city workers let another cable car run away. So empty, no driver, no passengers, just rolling down the street. And while we were looking out over the bay, looking out at Alcatraz and all the sights, it came from behind and crashed into the car that we were on. And I happened to be at the back of that car. And so I was in the wrong spot, wrong time. And when it hit, I was kind of crushed there and stuck. Yeah.
So take us into the hospital and what the doctors said to you.
Yeah, an hour and a half later, they managed to free me from the wreckage and then off to the hospital. At that point, I guess I went under for a little bit, and then they woke me up to get my consent. They informed me that the best course of action was to amputate, which when you're 21 years old is kind of rough news to get. Yeah. But once I got it, I mean, they had a pretty rock solid case as to why, because I asked them, are you sure? And they had no doubt. So I signed the form, and actually what they do is they get a Jiffy marker out and they actually put an X right on your leg. And so they don't do the wrong one. It's kind of cold, but hey.
Wow. And Brian Cowie, your partner and your teammate here in double para Ironman team. Brian, tell us a little about your story.
Well, my story is that in my early 20s, like Meyrick, I had gone to the ophthalmologist for an eye exam to get my glasses updated, and they were unable to get my vision up to 20/20. Mm-hmm. So their first thoughts are I think the first thought was it was diabetes, so I go for a number of those tests because that's one of the main causes for vision loss in your 20s and that. And then after a number of tests, they found out I had a somewhat rare degenerative eye disease that affects my central vision. Mm-hmm. So I have an early onset of macular degeneration, so which means my peripheral vision is good, but my central vision, where you see color, detail, is not good. So my eyesight has just been constantly going down for the past 30 years. So
degenerative keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They can't tell me if it's going to stay where it is, if it's going to get worse. There's not really much they can do. There's nothing they can do, and not much they can tell me about how it's going to be next year or the year after.
Brian, why don't you tell us about double para Ironman, and why don't you tell us about how you guys got together to connect and form a partnership?
Well, prior to our meeting in 2008, I think it was, we both had competed in triathlon separately. And we met in 2008 and found out that we both had a love for triathlon. And our first event really was the Seattle to Portland ride. It's a ride from Seattle to Portland. Some people do it in 2 days. Some do it in 1 day. We did it in 1 day on the tandem bike, 335 kilometers. And just prior to the ride, we thought maybe we should have a test run. So we went out for about a 15-minute test run, decided sounds like a good idea, did the whole thing in 1 day. And from there, we decided we would implement our love of triathlon, and we tackled the next year, we tackled the Ironman Canada. So we're really the only double para team that is competing at that distance or any distance that I know of. I
Yeah.
have not seen another one.
Tell us about the mechanics of how it works with the two of you competing in triathlon, Meyrick.
Well, starting with the swim, we wear a tether, which is kind of like a bungee cord. It wraps around my waist, and then it goes back to Brian and wraps around his waist, and it hopefully the plan is that it keeps him close enough to me in the swim that he can follow right on my foot.
So you're basically his guide on the swim.
Yeah, theoretically anyway. We've gotten tangled a few times with other athletes, but the idea is that he's able to swim right behind me, and when we get to the end, actually that's where he helps me because it's hard for me to get out of the water with one leg. So
you take your prostheses off, right, to...
Yeah, I don't swim with it on. It would be sort of like an anchor.
Yeah.
So I just swim with no prosthesis at all. And so that's the plan. It keeps him close enough that we're together. And then once we get onto the bike, obviously Brian's already mentioned it, we ride a tandem. So, but it's not like your typical mom and pop tandem. It's, fully kitted out with race wheels, and we're riding in the aero position, and we go fast. And then for the run, we use another tether. It's a different one than we use in the swim. It's a little shorter. And the idea there is just that we're close enough that I can make sure Brian doesn't run into a tree or something like that.
I've read some quotes from you, Meyrick, over the years. This was a story that the province did about you in 2008 when you were talking about, and we'll get into this in a second because triathlon is now a part of the Paralympics, and back then you were fighting. Well, actually, why don't we deal with that right now? I mean, you were lobbying to try and get triathlon as part of the program for the 2010 Paralympics or 2012 Paralympics. It's now in, right? It's going to make its debut.
Yeah. I guess it was about a year ago, I think. I'm not good with dates. It was about a year ago that it got the official green light to be a part of the Rio Games. And that was sort of the culmination of many years of effort by a lot of people around the world. But each of the sort of leading triathlon nations has had a small group of kind of dedicated para triathletes that worked hard to try to make our world championships big enough that it would attract the attention of the Paralympic Games, and that's a big effort to get enough athletes out to those events because they happen in one place in the world, and it's not like there's a ton of funding to get there. So it was a lot of effort by a lot of people around the world, but it finally worked out.
Brian, Meyrick, can you give us what was your reaction when you heard the news that triathlon would be a go?
Oh, I was excited. I thought it was about time. After a lot of hard work by a lot of people, it's where it should be. It should be a sport in the Paralympics. Triathlon's a hugely attractive sport around the world, and there's just no reason why it shouldn't be there. I think it was just basically with the Paralympic and the IPC, a lot of it's to do with numbers. And, we had to prove that there were the numbers there, that there was the interest, that the countries were there, that the athletes were there. And all that's been done now. So it's going to be there in Rio.
And, Meyrick, talk to me about you did some work with the Momentum Foundation. It tries to get people with disabilities active and out and competing in sports.
Yeah, that was a project that I started I don't know how many years ago now, but it was sort of like a personal project that I began to try to allow other people to follow in my footsteps and do the sort of things that I've been able to do and that Brian's been able to do. More recently, it's kind of morphed into a legacy project that Brian and I are working on, and we've just begun, and it's in partnership with Triathlon Canada. And we are going to be racing and raising money over the next few years, I hope, for a fund that we're beginning with Triathlon Canada. So the Momentum Foundation with that name has kind of been put on the shelf, but the new legacy project that we're working on is going to be doing essentially the same type of work.
All right, we only got time for a couple more minutes here, but I wanted to ask you guys about Amazing Race Canada. For those who don't know, the Amazing Race, the show down in the United States where teams go around the world and compete, well, it's being farmed out to the different countries. And Amazing Race Canada, which you'll be able to see on CTV, you guys have applied to be one of the teams. You fancy your chances?
Well, I think we have a great chance. we're pretty exclusive.
Yeah.
They're not. I'm pretty well sure there are not very many other entries like ours. And personally, I think we'd be pretty interesting to watch. So I think we have a good chance to be in it, and I think we have a super chance to do well in it if we get there.
Meyrick, what are your thoughts on Amazing Race?
Well, I mean, just making our application video was so much fun that I can't imagine how much fun it would be to be on the show. I hope we make it. Although Brian just told me that it's only held in Canada and that we won't actually be crossing any borders, and so I'm a little bit upset about that.
Well, you win Canada, then you get on the U.S. one, right? Then it's the world. That's right. The way I see this working.
I didn't know that it graduated like that. I hope you're right.
Well, yeah. I think it could morph into the international one where we have the champions from Canada face off against the champions from Australia, from Israel, from Germany, where all the other countries that have been competing, and we have one huge international Amazing Race.
Oh, my God, what a concept.
Sounds brilliant, gentlemen. Well, I'll tell you what. We're part of the CTV family here at the Team 1040. Now, we don't have any pull with the CTV Amazing Race people, but I think we can get them your story. So why don't we get this together, Eddie? We'll clip it. We'll send it off to those folks.
I thought you were going to tell us today that we were on.
No. I wish. Guys.
Aren't the powers that be listening right now?
Yes, he is listening. The powers that be are listening.
Call me.
We're certainly going to push your case internally here with our friends at CTV.
Oh, thank you.
Brian Cowie, Meyrick Jones, thank you guys for coming on in.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Best of luck.
Thanks, man.
Best of luck.